Hi, everyone. Like Matt said, my name is Hollis, and I'm a product manager here at Blackthorn. I am a relatively new Blackthorn employee, so I've been here about 6 months. Just a little bit about myself, my background is in higher ed. So I spent 8 years as a director of digital strategy for a graduate university. I also have worked as a professor, and I'm a perpetual student. So hopefully you are my people. And hopefully, after seeing this roadmap presentation, you will see how much that Blackthorn cares about the higher ed community. And feel free to ask me questions, either as a Blackthorn employee or as a former higher ed person. So we will go on. All right, so before I get into what's coming next, we just had some very recent releases that I wanted to point out. Some of the stuff, in fact, was released this very last week, so you may not have seen it yet. So we have 3 features that were released in the past couple of weeks, and many of you have been waiting for these, have been asking for these, and good, okay. So the first one is our Form Builder UI. Chris mentioned this in his initial, his keynote speech. So we actually do have a demo of this. It's available in our winter release page, where it's more than the demo. Chris showed a demo, I think, on LinkedIn, and we have an additional demo that is available on the Blackthorn site. And so the Form Builder UI allows you to have a drag and drop interface. Ooh. Okay, I can see it down here. All right, now I can see what's going on. It allows you to easily reorder questions. There's better navigation through forms. You can expand and collapse things. It's in general more intuitive. Even better, the preview of the form builder now mimics actually what it looks like to your end user. So when you are setting it up in Salesforce, you can actually see what your form is going to look like. All right, next feature that was just released is split payments, and I know a lot of you guys were excited about this one. So split payments, basically, the end user sees nothing different, but what it does is it allows you to split donations through the same, using the same payment gateway, but it allows you to automatically split donations when you have donations and other things such as purchasing tickets or other items. You can have those automatically split on the back. So it reduces manual reconciliation issues, makes it easier to manage and track what's going on, and hopefully makes things a little bit easier for you in general. So the third of our recent releases is single events that can now be associated with multiple event groups. So this is another big one that I know people have been waiting for, and it is finally released. So please check it out. Now you can associate an event with more than one event group. And this is fantastic because it means that now you have a single event and you can associate it with multiple things. So for example, imagine you have a JD MBA session and you want it associated with the law school event group, and with the business school event group. So you can do that now. It also allows your marketing teams to do a better job of marketing to different audiences. And it has better navigation, smarter navigation. It remembers where your users came from as they go through events and then back. And it has improved reporting. So as an event organizer, you'll be able to do a better job tracking who's viewing these events and just the overall engagement with them. All right, now to the future. So we have, the way this is broken out, I'm sure most of you are aware by now, but Blackthorn does basically continuous releases. So we talk about spring, we talk about fall, and really we release every month. So these are sort of loose groupings. I think when Chris was doing his keynote, he said around May, and that's because sometimes it comes out earlier. And so just keep that in mind when you see spring, when you see fall. It's sort of a rough timeline, and we will have better dates as we get closer to releasing all of these things. So the first item, this is a theme. So we have a few of these that are carrying us. It'll be multiple features or enhancements that happen from spring through fall, which is why we're calling them themes for 2025. They may even go through fall into winter. But for right now, we are looking at a few main items. And the first of those is Dynamic UI. Dynamic UI is our newest UI that we've added to our event builder. The sort of long-range goal is to make Dynamic UI our flagship UI. However, it is not there yet. So we have prioritized the items that need to be worked on for Dynamic UI to hopefully increase adoption. We'll be asking you guys, are you using it? Are you trying it? We want to get feedback about it. So the first of those is making sure that it has feature parity with tabbed UI. We're aware that it does not currently have the attendee tab and custom content in the same way that the tabbed UI does. We are fixing that. And we are also working on UI UX enhancements, including accessibility enhancements. So one of our goals is to move away from having to do a lot of custom CSS and spot fixes and instead give you something that's more robust out of the box that you can use for your events. So this also goes into branding and customization. We realize your marketing departments will be really happy if you can brand things a little more closely. And so we're working on enhancements related to that will let you create an event page that represents your institution in a way that you want. We are also improving the FAQs and then doing some tweaks around security and making reCAPTCHA work for free events. Event Builder, this was another thing that came up in the keynote. So we are working on making the Event Builder really a one-stop shop for building your events. And that includes making session setup easier, making inclusion of translation and data dictionary within the builder easier to access. Our goal is really to make it so that you guys don't have to leave the builder, do other things, and then come back to the builder to finish completing an event. We will be integrating the new Forms UI into the builder, so you'll be able to do that in a much more intuitive workflow. And we'll be including our advanced visibility controls, as well as improving the preview view in the wizard or for the builder so that you can see what your page will look like. All right, another theme, this was mentioned in the start of this, has to do with capacity management, but this is really part of a broader scope initiative that Blackthorn has in terms of improving stability, improving scalability, and just allowing us to scale with you as you have larger events so that we can really handle whatever you can throw at us. But one of those things is working on overselling and managing that, and that is something we're actively working on right now, and we will be able to give you updates on that. All right, so that was our themes. Those are things that you're going to continue to see released in both fall and spring. Just to focus on the spring release, which is roughly stuff that's released between now and May, we already discussed the Add to Apple Wallet button that allows you to save your QR code for easier check-in, save it to your Apple Wallet if you're using an iOS phone. Also, a lot of session-related things. So adding sessions to calendar. The new item here is being able to add sessions to your preferred calendar from both the confirmation page as well as from attendee link. Google Calendar integration is coming out first in spring, and then Outlook will follow after. So we have it roughly scheduled as fall, but it's coming out as soon as we can get it done. We also have Forms for Sessions, which is another really popular item. That is something we are working on. Yeah, I see some clapping. You will be able to ask your attendees what they want to eat if they've signed up for a session that requires food. So that is coming out soon, as well as required sessions. So required sessions is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to set a session as required, and then when a user gets a ticket, whatever sessions are needed, for example, for new student orientation, if someone has to participate in certain sessions, but not others. This will let you designate which of those sessions are required. All right, moving into our fall release. First thing is reporting improvements for event forms. So this is a bigger, actually slightly bigger than it sounds here. We're trying to improve our reporting across forms in general. So this will be event registration forms, session forms when they're in place, post-event surveys. We want to try to consolidate all of that information and make it easier for you to see sort of a big picture of what your event attendees are doing. And then finally, a project that I'm working on personally is kiosk mode. And so some of you may have talked to me about this, but kiosk mode is basically a view of the mobile check-in app that allows attendees to check themselves into events. And so this will help for events that are higher capacity, for events where it's really unwieldy to handle a bunch of volunteers or other people checking people in. We're going to have an MVP version of this being released in fall, and then we'll continue building upon it after that. And let's see. So this slide is in here, not just for color. But I wanted to also talk to you guys just really quickly about the product process at Blackthorn. So many of you submit, requests, ideas, maybe you have discovery sessions with us, and then you're not sure what happens. And something appears on the roadmap or it doesn't appear on the roadmap, and you wonder, why? Why this and not this? What happened to the thing that I talked to you about? So I wanted to put this up here mostly so that you all have a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of how our product process works. So we collect feedback, and we also look at things like industry trends. We have our own vision for where events management is going. So those things go into the beginning portion of the product roadmap cycle. And then we go through and we evaluate insights, and we do validation, we do additional discovery, which sometimes I will reach out cold and say, hey, you submitted an insight a little while ago. Can we talk about it? And then we have our engineering team review it. So everything we do, unfortunately, we don't have infinite engineering capacity, and so everything is a balancing act. And so we work with the engineering team, and they're the ones that help us figure out what can be done in the best order possible. We prioritize what's left based on impact and effort. It goes through additional reviews, and then it finally ends up on the public roadmap. So from here, once it's on the roadmap, it is in some stage of development. So it's either being actively worked on by the engineering teams, or it's about to be worked on by the engineering teams. And from here, it goes through development, it goes through QA, it goes through, then is released, and then we start collecting feedback about it all over again. So this is a continuous cycle that happens, that you guys are an integral part of. So that said, I want to talk about some of the things we're doing discovery around right now. One of those is improved data matching and deduplication issues. Chris mentioned these. It was something that came up in our product survey. We talked about it with our product advisory board, and we would love to hear from everybody else. What is happening with deduplication issues? How are you handling it? What are you doing for data matching? What systems are you using? I realize everybody is sort of in different places. Some of you are using managed packages. Some of you are not. Some of you are doing manual reconciliation. Some of you have built flows and built other processes for handling this. We want to know it all. So we want to see what's happening on your end. If you're having issues with data matching from events, and so that we can help improve that process. The other big discovery topic that we're working on right now is additional UI improvements. So I mentioned the dynamic UI, and I mentioned that we're trying to reduce having these sort of one-off put in custom CSS solutions. We're trying to actually get a bigger picture of what you all need for UI. So whether this has to do with marketing, branding, the content on the page, we're taking a step back, even from the dynamic UI, to have a sort of broader view and look at how we can best leverage Blackthorn's data with what you need it to look like on the front end. So that leads us to yet another QR code. This QR code, which you can also find on the back of my badge and the back of several other CS, customer success, other product people, some other people might have grabbed the stickers as well. This takes you to a form that asks two things. One of them is for feedback about Navigator, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And the other is indicating an interest to meet with the Blackthorn product team. So if you want to talk to us, we love to talk to you. We are building this for you, and so we want to build it with you. And we can only do that if you reach out or we reach out to you and we actually have some one-on-one conversations and really dig into what you're doing, what you need, and how things are going. So this QR code, if you miss it right now, come up to me, come up to anyone and ask, and we have it here as well. All right, so now we are going to talk about Event Navigator. And to do that, I'm going to introduce Chris, our SVP of Sales, and he's going to talk a little bit more about Events app in general, and then we'll talk about Navigator specifically.
Thanks, Hollis. Appreciate it. Great job. Oh, can I have the clicker? The clicker. Yeah, so you guys are wondering, like, oh, who lets sales on stage? I don't want to hear from this guy. But the reason I'm here is I've been in event tech since 2011. So I thought it'd be good before we got into Navigator to kind of frame up some things and how we should be thinking about this new feature, because it's a big, brave new step for Blackthorn. And I think for many of you, you're already experienced with this, but some of you will be like, I don't understand, explain the event app to me. So before we dive in, how many of you have used an event app at an event you've attended? Okay, I was hoping everyone raised their hand because we have an event app for this particular event. I encourage all of you to download it and give us feedback on it. How many of you have used an event app at an event you've hosted? Okay, so that's partly why we're going to go into this next section and talk about where the real value is. Where does the rubber meet the road when it comes to event apps? And when event apps really started to pick up steam about 10 years ago, it was transitioning away from paper to digital. So many things that we're already talking about today is how do we move a lot of these guest experiences into digital environments so we can capture more information, better understand our attendees, and engage with them on a much deeper level. So as I think about printed guides, there's a lot of restrictions with them. And one of the big challenges is cost. Printed materials can be very expensive. It says TBD, but our goal is to make this much more cost effective. We're still figuring out some things with the pricing model because some of you might want to use an app for one event, some of you might want to use an app for every event. So we're working on some ways to make this scalable and cost effective. But the idea is, something that's really cheap to spin up really quickly. On the other side, we think about time required. So putting together that 20-page printed guide with all the speaker bios and session content, that's a lot of time. And I think one of the other big challenges with printed material is you have to send it out a couple weeks before the event. And anyone that's run an event knows that there's a lot of changes in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks. And whiteout on your printed guides just frankly doesn't look all that good. So this is a way to move away from that whiteout and be able to make changes in real time. So I think that, to me, is one of the big things that event planners love, the flexibility. So let's say, for example, Chris Kearney was not supposed to be on stage today, but last minute, we want to put him up there and put his bio in the app. Those are things that you can do with digital, but not with printed guides. I think many of us are now forced to think about sustainability in our events. So that's not only the badges, the stock, the lanyards, all the other materials we're providing. So I think this is another way to kind of push that sustainability agenda and do it in a way that actually provides value, not to just do it to save face. How many of you have been to an event before where there's all the guides laying around? It looks like a bomb went off in the room. All the guides are laying all over the place. It looks like a total disaster. And you spend the last hour of your day with a glass of wine cleaning up all those guides. We want to avoid that so you can move on to reporting, post-event surveys, all those things that I think provide more value than picking up pieces of paper. And then the other part that I think is so critical here for the guests, one thing that I know groups are always trying to accomplish is extending that event life cycle. So how do I start engaging my attendees before the event to get them excited to participate in a meaningful way, or to introduce them to people that they can network with at the event? And during the event, making sure they're in the right session at the right time, or finding content that they're excited about. And then after the event, getting them to fill out the survey, access the documents, the presentations. An app really facilitates this in a way that printed guides cannot. So I think these are all things that I think about when what event makes sense for an app. It's how do I take advantage of these things? And let's be honest, a 20-person seminar for an hour probably doesn't need an app. Where I start to draw the line would maybe be 100+ people, and when there's a multitude of sessions or a bunch of different breakouts. So there are different things here that I think are important as it relates to why you would want to consider an app and when you should be considering an app. So we're really excited about this. It's a big step for us, and please continue to give us feedback. So I think as we continue going through the rest of the event today, we want you guys to poke around, try and break it. That's why we deployed it for the event here. We're expecting you guys to be very critical and point out all the things that we missed. We brought all the best and brightest to this event, so please tell us where you think we can improve. And this app is very much so in its infancy. We started with some core functionality like things like agendas, maps, attendee lists, some of the kind of baseline things. But I think the future is very bright because there's some areas that make this app quite a bit different than some of the other ones in the marketplace. The native to Salesforce. So how can we surface things that are associated to the attendee record that enhance that experience for the attendee while they're in the app? How do we potentially layer in things with Agentforce for real-time support for that attendee when they have questions? And then how do we gather information about that attendee as they're using the application to continue to build out that attendee profile to make sure we promote future events to them where we know they're going to register because they took XYZ action at the event right now. And I think that's something I'm always thinking about is attendees vote with their feet. They go to sessions they're excited about. So if we can track that and understand that, we can better engage with them going forward. So moving on, if you haven't downloaded it, please do. I think this is something that we can't build without you guys. And we want to build something that's different. I want to reiterate that. We don't want to build the same app that everyone else already has. We have an opportunity in being late to the game to build something that's totally different that serves you in a way that maybe others cannot. So throw us your craziest ideas. We're here for it. That's why we want you guys in this room giving us feedback and helping us shape the direction of this app. So yeah, now we're going to move on to something no one's ever heard of before called Agentforce. New, exciting.
Oh, there we go. All right. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Blackthorn and Agentforce and kind of how we're thinking about this. And one of the things that I really wanted to make sure we started today with, based on conversations that I had today, is resetting kind of an expectation. What is Agentforce? Before I do that, the two people who are going to be talking today, myself, I'm Michael McDonald. I'm a sales engineer. And we've also heard from Chris. He's going to be up here. We're going to have some Q&A at the end. So any of the questions I can't answer, I'm going to give to him. But when we take a look at that question of what is Agentforce, we can just think of it. I know a lot of people here are event planners, maybe not necessarily fully entrenched in the Salesforce ecosystem yet. But the key is it's going to be AI to make your lives easier. It's going to be able to do the tasks that you want it to do. It's going to be able to, from an events perspective, you're going to be able to leverage it to make the events, to get you data, to get you insights. So when we're thinking about the three main pillars that we're looking at is how Blackthorn thinks about it, is how does AI help your attendees? How does AI impact your planners? And how does AI interact with your data? So those are kind of the three main things that we're constantly looking at, that we want to be looking at, just because those are where we think it's going to have the most impact. Similar to what Chris mentioned with our event planner, or the Event Navigator app, excuse me, we want to make sure that you provide us the feedback because we want to know where you see AI fitting into your overall landscapes as well. So from a planner, we think about, all right, we're going to be able to create events. We're going to be able to do targeted lists. From an attendee's perspective, we're going to be able to transfer our registrations. We're going to be able to do refunds. Things that you all might be doing manually, we're going to be able to start setting up some self-service for those individuals. And then how it interacts with our data. A lot of times I think it's reports, dashboards, all of these great aspects that allow us to get the information that we need from an event and from an event's perspective. But now we're going to be able to, in natural language, query things like what percentage of people answered this way to this specific form. So we're going to take a look at some of those here. When we come to some of those use cases, building out the events. The ones that we're actually going to take a look at is adding people to campaigns. So it's like, I have 100 donors. What is that going to look like? Events with the highest registrations for some data and some insights. As I mentioned, being able to transfer tickets via attendee link and also inside of Experience Cloud. On top of that, we also want to emphasize that what you're seeing today is pretty limitless in terms of how we're able to leverage things like text messaging. So inside of Experience Cloud, we're going to see how someone might register for an event interacting with an agent, but that same thing can be applied when we think about texting. How are we allowing individuals to register via a text with an agent, helping them step by step through the process? This piece we're not going to be able to show today, but we do want to mention it, is being able to do visualized data. So this screenshot that we're looking at is leveraging Education Cloud and Data Cloud so that we can generate a report on an individual that shows all of their event attendance. So that's something that is going to be very, very impactful. We're going to be able to click Generate Summary. Your gift officers, your admissions counselors, everyone's going to be able to look at the event attendance and start to know how an individual has interacted with our events. So with that, I'm going to set up my laptop. We're going to start going through a demo, and then we'll get into some questions at the end. Yeah.
So just real quick, this thing that you're looking at here, if anybody knows Chris Clark from the education team at Salesforce who works on product, he oversaw this thing, the data visualization table. I think that's what they're technically calling it. Currently, it's only for Education Cloud. They're trying to make it industry-wide. But basically what it's doing is the Agentforce stuff you're seeing is not this thing. There are two completely separate things. This is using generative AI. So if you're used to using ChatGPT, you type something and generate some information about it or something. That's effectively what this is doing. So what it's doing is it's pointing at a data model and giving you a summary about the person. So this might tell you who's most likely to be a donor based upon the SMS messages that they've responded to through Blackthorn messaging, the last 2 events that they went to based upon their preferences. And this thing can point at the data models that you're giving it. So it's actually using Data Cloud behind it. So if any of you have Education Cloud, that thing I think is available, and you have to have this Einstein for Education Cloud license. This is kind of a weird new thing, so if this is of interest, then just come up to me and ask me. This isn't like some other thing you have to buy from us or something. It's just like baked into the Education Cloud, and I think it's kind of cool. And are you ready to go? Okay, he's almost ready. So quick thing on Agentforce, this is something you're going to keep hearing about, and unless you're in the weeds, this might seem like a black box because it frankly took me a while to understand what this thing is as well. If any of you have used Salesforce Flow or even heard of it, something that you can click buttons and it does some automations in Salesforce, what Agentforce is it's like a framework where you can combine all of your automations. So if you have Flow, if you have Apex, if you have some, think of them as, if you want generic terms, just like actions that you can throw into, is not a technical term, but like a package. And this thing will picture ChatGPT and you're telling it something, but because of the way that we've tailored it, it understands your data model and it can make decisions based upon those actions. So what we're actually going to be packaging are a series of these actions. So it will understand your data model, understand what you're asking for, and execute those actions. So the most simple way to think about it is that it just looks like a chatbot, but you're able to just interact with it like it's ChatGPT. Now we're ready to roll. Okay, almost ready to roll. While we're doing this, are there any questions that anybody has pressing that you want to field at the moment? No? Okay, great.
Can I get, oh, it is on. Perfect. Can I get the, oh, it's up there? Perfect. All right. So we're going to do a couple of quick use cases. I have all of my prompts typed out, so you're going to see a little peek behind the curtain of what we're going to be doing here. But the first thing that we're going to be doing is compiling an invite list. So first thing that I'm going to do is ask it to please add top 100 donors to my Agentforce demo campaign. So this is Agentforce. We're interacting with it inside of our org. When I hit paste and enter, it's now going to be querying our data. So it's going to be looking for our, oh, thank you, Chris. It's going to be looking for our top 100 donors and add them to this campaign. Spoiler alert, there are not 100 people in this list that will be added. But it's going to query all of that, and then it's going to add it for us. So that way, instead of having to run that report and having individuals do that, instead, we're going to have it added right now. So it says here, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add a note so they can't have both on at once. You make both at once? Cool. Just a quick note. I don't know if there's any Salesforce people in the room. If you've used Salesforce Lightning before, when it first came out, it really wasn't Lightning. It was kind of slow. Agentforce is I suspect it's going to get a lot faster. The reality is that the available range of your query is going to greatly impact how long it's going to take you to get a result. So if you have a contact table of 4 million people, which some of you actually might, it might take a little bit longer than if you had 1,000. So based upon the query that you're making, it's going to impact some of the result. And you're also going to see that internal to Salesforce, it actually responds a lot faster than through a community, through Experience Cloud.
So with that, we created, with our query, we now have added these campaign members to this campaign just by asking Agentforce to do so. We can then ask it another question of which event had the most attendees. Let's just do registrations. Registrations. Similarly, now it's going to run through that, the query now querying on which event of ours actually had the most registrations, and we can see that it's the Tail Wagon Walkathon 2024, and it's giving us the number of people that actually registered for this event as well. Along that same vein of getting us the data that we need, I want to use it to now query a form question. So what % of our attendees responded younger than 18 to what is your age range? It's going to end up giving us 2 numbers. One of those numbers is the number of people that responded to this question with that. Please provide the date range. There we go. The percentage is the top number. The bottom number is the number of people that actually responded this way. So it's saying that 59.49% responded to younger than 18, and then the 47 is the actual number. The reason that I think these kind of queries and being able to do this with something like Agentforce is really, really powerful is that it allows you to tailor what your event is going to look like. Chris already mentioned when talking about Navigator, the attendees voting with their feet. Well, now as a planner, prior to the event, without needing to run a report, instead you can just ask, hey, what sessions or how many people are this demographic that are ending up coming to this event?
I think this is like a dream for planners, because even if you're coming off as, okay, when I got married, we used paperless post. Okay, this is like an incredible platform, actually. It's incredibly easy. But still, you'd have to click somewhere else to go view a report, right? This thing, you're just in whatever interface you're in, and you just ask it for what you need. Like, it's kind of amazing. So I think if you even change management is a big thing, no matter what you're doing. So if you have people that are on Eventbrite or coming off of something that, they might just be like, hey, just click this and it works, just show them this thing. I think this is like pretty convincing in itself.
All right, we're going to change it up now. So that was some of the back end inside of Salesforce, Agentforce use cases. Now we're going to move on to an attendee. What can an attendee start to do when we leverage Agentforce? We're actually in the attendee link right now. This is pretty cool. This is something that one of our team members did for a hackathon, where it was not just leveraging Agentforce inside of internal CRM or inside of an Experience Cloud site. This is Blackthorn's attendee link, and what we're seeing right here is our test agent. So what I'm going to do right now is transfer my registration.
This is unauthenticated Salesforce exposing Agentforce. If you look on Google for the documentation, good luck finding it. This is a very limited documentation thing that we found some magical ways to be able to expose. So there are some layers of like identifying who someone is if you want to do some stuff. So this is why we're saying May-ish is the tentative time frame, because some of the stuff we're doing is a little experimental, but I think this becomes a pretty game-changing stuff to save your planners a ton of time.
I think on top of that, not only as Chris was mentioning with some of it being a little bit experimental, this is also where we want some feedback of, does this make sense? Is this something that we're going to want to implement? So our agent is now saying, sure, I can help you with that. Now we need the following pieces of information. So my email address is, and it will take you through the process kind of step by step, where it's like, I'm Michael McDonald. It's now asking us for the person that we want to transfer my ticket to, which I need to remember who I said it was.
Yeah, so you can give it some like pseudo validation, so you don't just get some like willy-nilly thing happening in here. But it's up to you how you want to set those up. So a lot of us rolling out our Agentforce functionality to you, we really need your feedback, because we're frankly making guesses as to what we think would be most beneficial. And I think this has been one of the limiting factors of ChatGPT when it came out, because people didn't know what this thing could do. So I actually think this can do almost any kind of data manipulation we want to do, but some of your guidance is going to be needed so we can control the actions that it's performing.
I also want to call out, you guys might be looking at the prompt that came back, which is like, great, now give us the name of the ticket. These are all examples of things that we can ask for to make sure that things get appropriately moved over. You're not going to necessarily need to ask them, hey, make sure to enter the ticket. This is just an example, again, of where we can start to go and how this one was built out. So we're really trying to focus on what the overall experience is going to be for the individual as they're going through this and working with something like Agentforce. But we can see now we have that success message saying that it has successfully been transferred, and now this individual, in this case, A. Miller, is registered for this event, where I have now canceled.
Just to reiterate what you just seen, I think it's pretty amazing. Just personally, we're not launching rocket ships over here, but that's kind of awesome. So I think it's cool.
Similarly to this, trying to get as big as possible so we can see it again, is now we're inside of a community. So what we looked at was unauthenticated inside of an attendee link. Now inside of a community, we can ask it questions of what events are happening this week. And as Chris mentioned, we're beholden to a couple of things. One being the processing of how quick this query can run. The second being the Wi-Fi that we're on. So I've been running this. It takes a little bit of time for us to come back, but when it does, it's then going to be able to walk an individual through the registration process inside of Experience Cloud without them needing to go to a form itself and submit all of the details. So soon, it should load. If it doesn't, we'll send some follow-up, we'll send some video. The prompting is going to be very, very similar to what we saw inside of the attendee link, just being done with Experience Cloud. Looks like this query might take a little bit of time, but
Yeah, I don't know how many live demos you're going to see of this executed by Salesforce, but it does work, and it still is a little bit slow in communities. We don't really know why. We've asked support, but hopefully it can get a bit quicker. But we're also hoping that we can find some way that it can tell you it's processing. You'll see the internal to Salesforce one says it has like the dots and it's analyzing your request or whatever. But here, like we haven't been able to surface that yet. So there's still quite a bit of unknowns, but what it allows you to do is like pretty awesome.
So it did come back. It gave me Education Summit 2025 happening this week, giving me information about why I should attend. But when we get to the bottom, we can also see they've linked out the link to register, or they can help with the registration. So I'm just going to say, please help me register. Similarly to what we saw, where it's going to ask for some pieces of information, it's now going to say, please give me your full name and email address. So I'm going to do that.
Right, and this will support custom questions as well. So if you have your registration process that has a whole bunch of stuff, you can put it in there too. We actually haven't tried to do this with paid events yet, but I would imagine there's some way for us to surface like a pay link or some other way to capture payment details. So if that's of interest, let us know. I'm sure there's some way we can figure that out.
So now I'm providing my email. It's going to run through it, and then you're going to see here in a moment that it's going to start to ask, all right, what ticket, what sessions. So now I can go to the boot camp for free. Both of these are free, so I'm just going to respond with one. I'd like to go to the Education Cloud Boot Camp.
A lot of what we're packaging is actually what it's returning as the result. Otherwise, it has to guess. Attendee has like a lot of fields. Event item has a lot of fields. It doesn't really know what to do. So a lot of what we're tailoring, and the reason it's going to be a managed package from us is because we have to continuously update what it is that you're looking for, what the queries are, and how the output is. Like you'll see that session ID like looks horrible. It should be like the session name, for example. But that's like a very quick thing for us to change, but we need to like be testing it so we get the output.
And there we go. I have now registered for this event. So with that, we'd love to get some questions, some thoughts, some feelings, some feedback, anything at this point. It's open to you all for anything that you all might want to know more about. What can we answer?
Oh, yes, Jackie, you have a question?
I'm wondering how granular you can get with not this part, but the first part you were showing. Like if we have different event categories, can you say what's the most popular event in this category or for this group of users? Because we have so many different people using. We want to make sure we're not getting data from the wrong group of people.
Yeah, I mean, something like that is like a pretty straightforward one that it can do. But it would need to kind of know how you're thinking about that, because everybody's modeling might be a little bit different. So I guess, yeah, if you do run into something like that, just try it with this thing and let us know if you want to like repoint the query somehow. Some of this you'll have control over, some of it you won't. A lot of the new packaging stuff that Salesforce made, I think they made Agentforce first and then figured out packaging later for ISVs. So I think some things you'll be able to add in as a layer on top of ours into the same agent, I think. Any other questions? Or just so mind-blowing you don't really know what to... There's one in the back here.
Yeah, really quick. So when you said you're packaging actions up into I guess you said managed package, what are these actions again?
They're flows and Apex to point it to different things. So what's behind this is with Agentforce, you get to pick your LLM, your large learning or large language model. If anyone's familiar with OpenAI, they have whatever it's called, 4 and 1 OM or whatever these things are. Or Anthropic has Claude and all those different versions and whatnot. So you actually get to pick your LLM that's driving this, but it doesn't really know what to do. The purpose of these things is to understand natural language, and somehow it understands your data model. What we're doing is you type in guidance so it kind of understands your vernacular, and then behind the vernacular it says, what do I do with these instructions? And then it looks at the different types of actions you have. So if it says like, I want a refund, it doesn't know that it has to go to our transaction and execute a refund. We have to like point it to that. So I think by the time that we don't have to point it to that, we all lose our jobs. So I think for now, we have these actions where it's like flow and Apex, and that's like what it knows to do. I don't think it's going to get to the point where it knows exactly what to do without having some kind of automated instruction for quite some time. But that's more or less what's behind it. So as you get into all these, that's where we can add more flows and more Apex into these that will be upgradable. No other questions? Cool. Well, thank you.